Today I'm going to be doing a knife review on this knife right here, the Shirogorov 95t. I first saw this knife about a year ago on some Facebook groups. If y'all are in the Facebook knife community, you're going to know which ones I'm talking about. Knife Gods, Knife Trading, Selling, and Feedback, some of those, and I'm sure you're probably also familiar with this person I'm about to refer to. He's got a really nice knife collection. He's got, I think, 2 Shiros. He used to have a Norseman, but he sold it. He's got a ton of bodegas. He's got a lot of really nice knives. And so I saw him posting about this one, and with his reputation, I was like, you know, that looks like a really nice knife, but I would never be able to afford it. Once I learned the price, I thought the same thing. This knife will run you around $700 on the secondary market, even more new, like around, I think it was like 800 or 900 or something. Anyway, but eventually I sold a couple knives and was able to pick one up I saw for sale, this one. And I do not regret a thing because it is amazing. In my opinion, it is the perfect knife. Not saying it's the best knife, but there is nothing wrong with it. It is perfect. So let's go through and let's talk about some of the reasons I say this. First, let's start with the blade, as I always do. It's got a gorgeous, I'm going to call it a full flat grind. There's a flat right here, but I don't think that that's enough to qualify, and it's just kind of, you know, a style thing, not really a grind thing. So it has got a beautiful either high flat grind or full flat grind. I really like those because they allow you to have a strong blade, but a blade that is also pretty thin behind the edge. And it's just very simple looking. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to sharpen, but you know, you get over that. You just do the calculations. I use an Edge Pro Apex, so whenever I have to do a flat ground knife, I have to do some calculations to change the angle on the Edge Pro to get the angle I want. So another thing about the grind that I really like is the execution of the plunge grind in the choil. If y'all watch the Apostle P, you'll know that he talks about this a lot. Since I sharpen knives also, I used to sharpen knives as a business. Now I just sharpen my own knives really, and maybe some friends' knives. But I really hate it whenever I have to, this flares out, or I'm not able to get it all sharpened. But I was able to on this one. One thing that may be a downside for someone, and kind of was for me, but it doesn't bother me anymore, is the steel. I mean, it varies. I've seen 95Ts in M390. I haven't seen any in 154. There's a couple of other steels that I'm not very familiar with that are very exotic and probably very expensive steels. Vanix, I think that might be the name of one of them. Anyway, I haven't had any experience with those steels, but I'm gonna guess that they're really good. But if you do pick up an S31, I wouldn't really complain if I were you, because the heat treat on this is really good. It reminds me a lot of Strider's heat treat. A lot of people that own Striders and sharpen it, you know, and they compare it to like Spyderco's S30, they'll tell you that there's a big difference in how it's heat treated. I agree. And I feel like this is up there with Strider. It's got a very nice heat treat on it. Because of that, I'm able to get a pretty fine edge, pretty keen, I should say. This one is sharpened at 18 degrees per side. I didn't include a secondary bevel on this one, and that's because I don't really feel like you need one if you're 18 degrees per side. I feel like if you're below that, you might need a micro bevel. But at 18 degrees per side, it still is very sharp, and very durable. I've stropped this and that's it. I haven't had to resharpen it or anything, and I've owned it for a little bit and I put it to some good use. The jimping on the blade, for me, it's enough to grab my finger. It's very soft. You run your hand over it and you're like, hey, that's not going to do anything. But then you start to use it and it actually works well. Also, it's a good indexing point. I normally don't use that jimping a lot because most of the time I'm back here, but whenever I do use that jimping, it works well. So let's move down to the handle now. And first, I just want to address the nice milling patterns on it. So let's just take a moment and look at their laser etched logo. Finishing on that titanium and the work put into it. Just beautiful. That's one of the things that also drew me to this knife, the pattern. Similarly to how the honeycomb on the Norseman's drew me to them, the pattern on this just looks beautiful and is executed flawlessly. I mean, I've seen a lot of different Shirogorov 95Ts with different type finishes. I've seen some with kind of more of a polish and some with a heavy stonewash. I feel like this one kind of falls right in the middle there, in that it's not heavily stonewashed, but it's not exactly polished or satined. Which reminds me, there are some amazing versions that I've almost bought another one of these of, which is where these flats are like sanded and made to a high polished satin, and it looks beautiful. But it's not what I've got here. Maybe you'll be able to pick one of those up, but I am content with this one for now. And I am very happy with the finish from the factory they put here. Going back to the handle and stuff, it feels very ergonomic in the hand any way you hold it. Flipping it, it feels great. I can't really do it in an angle, but most of the time you will be able to just release that lock bar and the blade close on itself, but from the angle I'm at in recording this video, it's really hard to demonstrate that. But yeah, there we go. There's a little bit of a demonstration. But anyway, back to the handle. You can see how it's got a ton of milling going on, both decoratively and functionally rounding this titanium off. So no hot spots, no sharp corners. Let's look in here. Nice little cutout on the lock bar. Makes it very comfortable. Got a stainless steel lock bar insert. It locks up fairly early, but a lot of them do, from what I've seen in videos and from talking to people in the Shirogorov community. A lot of them lock up really early, but no one has ever reported any lock slip or failures of any kind. You can see they kind of did a Chris Reeve type milling here. I really like it. One thing that I don't see on a lot of knives that I really like is this flipping recess, so that whenever you flip it, your hand goes right along here, and it feels so nice, because you're not up against any hard aluminum or hard titanium. Like the Norseman doesn't have this, and the Southern Tolk doesn't have that. I'm not saying it's uncomfortable to flip it, but this is comfortable to flip. This one makes me want to flip it more because it feels good. The other ones, like, there's a difference between it feeling good and it just not hurting. This just feels good. And it also feels good whenever you put your hand there in a regular saber grip whenever you're using the knife. So that's another reason I think it's a perfect knife. All of these are contributing factors, that there are no hot spots, that the milling is decorative but it's perfectly finished. No spots that they have a little cutout here that makes it so easy to disengage the lock bar. The laser etching on the handle is beautiful. Crisp, so well done. Now, or you know what, I'm also going to include the clip in this. Let's look at the clip. It reminds me of a lot of the clips that CKF puts out, but it's very well done. I have had no problems inserting this into the pocket, and you know, it stays in there nice. It looks really good being 3D machined. I'm not like another YouTuber that does a lot of high-end knives, higher end than these. I think you know who I'm referring to, but he only really likes 3D clips. I think they're insanely cool, and if executed right, I love them. But you know, I'm okay with a spring clip like the Sabenza and the Tolk. It doesn't bother me, but the way this is done is just perfect. I will say, in my experience, I did something stupid. I was laying on my bed with this one, listening to music, and I put my earbuds on, and somehow the earbuds had gotten under this clip, and whenever I stood up, I was kind of, or whenever I leaned forward, I think I was kind of sitting on the knife a little bit, so it just pulled the clip up, because those wire earbuds aren't going to snap, because it's pretty strong, the cord. But I was able to go get a screwdriver. You can see I tried a couple different methods first, and it kind of marred the pivot. Whoop. And I apologize for that. Anyway, you can see how it kind of marred the pivot here. It doesn't bother me. It reminds me of that mistake in that I need to make sure I'm more careful, but I was able to just get a screwdriver and very carefully pop it off without marring it anymore, and unscrewing that screw to bend the clip back. Let's talk about execution of the mechanics. This knife has the lightest detent I've ever felt on a knife. Okay, I'm not going to say the lightest detent, because I felt some where there was pretty much no detent, but on a high-end knife, it's as light as the lightest hinderer detent you'll find. You'll find a lot of hinderers with really light detents, and that's what people complain about because it can't flip. This has about that level of detent, but I mean, you see it has no trouble. It has no trouble flying out of the handle, and I'm not even pushing it hard. I'm just kind of, you know, rocking back on it. Just kind of, your finger catches on the jimping here, and then you just pull back. It flips amazing. That's the first thing I noticed. I pulled this knife out whenever I got it. I was like, wow. It's so smooth, so free, that all you gotta do is just, and it flies out. And I mean, it's not dangerously light. I could probably shake it out if I wanted to. Let's try. Yeah. But it's not gonna shake out unless you give it a conscious effort to. So it's got a perfect detent in my opinion. I prefer a lighter detent if the knife still functions flawlessly and that it still rockets out and locks up solid. I would prefer a softer detent just because I play with my knives a lot, and the stronger detents can you know, cause problems over time. Let's talk about the last part of the knife that I haven't covered, and that's the hardware. It's all custom hardware. It's all very nice looking. I mean, you can see that there's not a lot to it, but it just goes so well with the rest of the lines of the knife. All the milling work done. So I really like it. And there's only 2 screws holding this together. Originally that worried me, but I have had no problems with this perfect centering. and I think that I haven't taken this knife apart. Most of the time I do, but just with these higher end knives, if it doesn't need it, I don't do it. Like, you know, with lower quality knives, like the Southern Tolk and the Sebenza, I'm not saying those are low quality knives, those are still high quality knives, but this is in a different level, in my opinion, as is my Norseman. But with those knives, I don't take it apart unless I need to. If it's like, you know, $400 mid-tech or anything underneath production, I always take my knife apart just to make sure that I get the best performance I can. But anyways, I was saying, it flips beautifully. No blade play. Unlock the lock bar. Try to move the blade side to side, you get nothing. Apparently an adjustable detent. I'm not sure if that's adjustable or if that's for the lock bar insert. Either way, I'm probably not going to mess with it because it's just perfect as it is. So I already talked about the price on this. This is an exclusive knife. It is a knife that if you get, you're kind of in the club, I guess you should say. I mean, its quality is on par, if not better than my Norseman, and I paid $300 more for my Norseman. Not saying I like this knife better. I honestly, at this point in my collection, I can't choose a favorite. I just can't. But this knife is just, there's nothing wrong with it. I cannot find anything to complain about this knife. For the Norseman, I was able to find a couple. The plunge grind wasn't executed perfectly. I think I talked about that. And it didn't have extra features like this, because this is above and beyond. You don't really need a flipper recess, but this has it anyway because it's just that awesome. Man, I love playing with this thing. I love carrying it. If you check out my Instagram feed, JW Knives, you'll see that I carry this knife a lot because it's just so perfect. And I believe that a year or two ago, the secondary market price on this knife was through the roof, into the thousands. I'm not sure if I would pay that much. I mean, if I did, I would not be disappointed, but I wouldn't have been able to experience the awesomeness of this knife. And now that the prices are back down to the earth, I think that y'all should definitely check one out if y'all have the price or y'all have the money, and even do what I did. I'm going to talk about value in a later video, and how many knives I sold, how many awesome knives I sold to get my Norseman, and that I don't regret it at all. But just the idea of flipping a knife or selling it to get something, a grail that you truly like, because that's what this was for me. Once I saw the guy on Facebook's, once I saw him post about this knife and talk about it, I wanted one, but I knew that that was way out of my reach at that point. That was a knife that I was never going to be able to buy a year ago. And I mean, then I watched Jim Skelton videos, and I wanted it even more, just because you know, when you're a knife guy, even if it's a knife you know you're probably never going to be able to get, you like watching videos, you like learning about it. It's kind of a sickness because it's not good for us to do that, because it makes us want it even more, even though we're not going to be able to. But, you know, we all do it. And this was one of those knives for me that, you know, I was able to get, and that's what the Norseman was. So if you're in that situation where you really want one, go ahead and sell some of those cheaper knives that maybe you like but you don't love so much. Or maybe you do love them but you really want to try this. I mean, most likely those are production knives that you can get more of, but these are, you know, fairly limited. They're not as rare as Norseman's or as Bodegas, but they're still fairly rare. And actually, I'd say they're probably about as rare as Bodegas, because you don't see Bodegas pop up on sale that often, or for sale that often, and they're about as often as these, as you'll see these for sale. Well, that's it for my video. I hope you enjoyed. If you get the chance to, I would really suggest picking this up, or its brother, the Hati, which is pretty much the same thing, but with a smooth scale on the lock side and carbon fiber. That would be a really, really nice knife too. I think that one is on phosphor bronze bearings, which reminds me, I forgot to mention the system in here. Mine is just the single row bearings. Now they have a ton of different types of bearings. I'm not as well educated in that as I could be, but they have a ton of different pivot systems. They have phosphor bronze, they have single row bearings, double row bearings. I believe that these are just ceramic bearings that they have perfected. The Hati, I've heard, is still extremely smooth. Jim Skeleton has a video on that if you want to check it out. If you see a Hati for sale and you're trying to figure out if you want to jump the gun on that one, I would say yes, because I think it's just as good of a knife as this one. Just kind of a different style, because it's carbon fiber instead of titanium. And it's got like fluted carbon fiber or something, instead of this kind of chainsaw design. Anyway, I was ending the video, so I'll see you guys on the next one, and y'all have a great day.